Thank you all for coming back. I hope you had a good coffee break and the post-session. So next up is Roy Azuloy, who is going to talk to us about, there he goes, fighting deepfakes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Roy. I work for Serelay. We are a UK-based startup tackling fake photos and videos at scale. I think we're sort of a late addition to this conference. I only got to rehearse this presentation once, so please bear that in mind. The two things I'd like to discuss today is, one, present to you a new paradigm for tackling fake photos and videos, the verify at capture approach. And the second, talk about the societal issues and risks that maybe we should be considering when we introduce a new technology, such as this one, to the market. But before we get there, let's remind ourselves where we stand in terms of photo and video manipulation. And that's nothing new. I think that some of the talks this morning touched on this. But basically, we are at the point where you can generate a photo or a video of anyone saying anything. These are believable to human eyes. The cost of generating them are declining, and the expertise, the technical expertise required to generate them is declining as well. So I think all of us in this room are aware of this threat. Many of us are talking about it in the context of the upcoming elections. And when we look at detection, I think there are two main school of thoughts or two paradigms that currently are available. The first is what's called the forensic approach. And the assumption there is that if you give me a photo or a video, I hope to develop the means to assess the structure of that photo or video and assess whether, one, it is an accurate representation of the physical world, B, it is an accurate but modified version of the physical world, so it's been photoshopped or otherwise edited, and what we are increasingly seeing, a relatively new threat, that it is completely synthetic media, it never existed, and those can be particularly difficult to detect because they don't have the inconsistencies that we would expect to find in edits. And I think it's fair to say that no one is arguing today that there is a silver bullet for the forensic approach, for detection. We haven't seen an effective way to detect deepfakes. I would argue that we haven't even seen an effective way to detect Photoshop to date. No one can really do it quickly, conclusively, and at scale. Some people are particularly pessimistic about the potential of forensics, and if I need to really simplify that argument, and please forgive me if you come from a technical background, but I would say, look, a photo at the end of the day is just a collection of pixels. If I know how to rearrange these well enough, how would you ever know that these pixels don't represent the real physical world? The second approach, which is a bit newer, and Serelay is one of the companies that support this approach, is what we call verify at capture. And there we try to look at things a bit differently. And what we say is, you know, these devices, right, they can take photos, but they can do many other things. They have quite a sophisticated security infrastructure. They have great computing capacity. They are occasionally, at least, connected to a network. And maybe what we should be thinking about is something a bit more fundamental. Can we use these devices to capture photos and videos in a way which is inherently verifiable? So the output is still a normal photo or video file. It's still a fully compliant JPEG or MP4 file, but at the same time, these files can be queried for authenticity quickly, conclusively, and at scale. This is what we started doing at Serelay back in 2017, but we decided we are going to do this with two self-imposed principles, and those sort of link to some of the societal issues I'll mention in a bit. The first thing we decided is that we are going to have no usernames, no logins, no passwords. If what we are building is meant to detect the authenticity of content, we should completely separate it from identity. we should not have to attribute any of the checks that we make to a named individual. Moreover, it also means that the capture process doesn't need to introduce any more friction from a user experience perspective. It should be just as easy as opening any camera app, clicking a photo, or capturing a video, and moving on. So that's the first principle. That's simple enough. The second one is that we don't save a single photo or video on our servers for verification purposes. What do I mean by that? Well, some solutions on the market tend to adhere to what's called a chain of custody approach. So as soon as you capture the photo or video using this trusted method, your entire input stream, your sensor metadata, the actual camera stream, gets stored on a third-party server, the verification provider server. And what that means is that from that point onwards, if that photo needs to be queried 6 months down the line or 12 months down the line, there is a reference point. You can make a one-to-one comparison. We don't adhere to this approach. In my personal view, I don't think it's ideal. And the reason I don't think it's ideal is I don't think it's in my best interests as a user to have my photos or videos immediately stored on a third-party service. But actually, I don't think that as a company, it's in my best interests as well, in the sense that I don't want to be able to view any sensitive material. I don't want my employees to have this option, regardless of their access level. And if I am hacked as a company, and we know that anything is hackable given enough resources, I don't want anything of value to be found there. So what we did over the first 2 years of the company is create the capability to document a capture event and secure a capture event with a very small amount of data. So between 10 and 15 kilobytes is all we need to store in order to tell you that a certain photo or video is real. So we have enough to verify this photo or video if you give it to us, but we don't have enough, mathematically speaking, to recreate the content on our own. Now let's see what that sort of looks like. So this is a photo that I took in London quite a few months back. It was a peaceful little demonstration by LGBT activists outside the Daily Mail offices. And this is what it looks like when I want to verify this photo. So this is our verification dashboard. The photo is not stored on it, but it was captured using our SDK. And we can very quickly say this photo is an exact match, down to the pixel, to the original capture event. It's a photo of a real, live, three-dimensional scene, not someone taking a photo of their laptop screen. The device it ran on is not compromised. We don't think the operating system has been manipulated. And we do similar checks for location as well. So rather than needing an analyst and a few hours to analyze content, if we implement verification at the point of capture, we can do this quickly. Moreover, while this is built for human analysts, all of these checks are available via API and can be scaled to social media scale. Let's see, for the sake of argument, what happens when it's not legit. So say I got my hands on this photo and I had an agenda. I photoshopped that little knife at the foot of one of the protesters. We'll upload that one to the dashboard. And we can see immediately it's not an exact match. We don't have the original to compare to because, as I mentioned, we don't store them, but we can make an approximation of where changes in the photo has occurred. And just one last fun example. So this is not me being physically present in Jurassic Park. It's a photo of my laptop screen, and what I want to see there is that this gets detected as well. So it's very rudimentary, it's an exact match, nothing too smart with the operating system, but the input is problematic, which is a very crude but effective hack on how you can get around verified capture. So this is the technology at large, and we have different providers, including Serelay, providing different flavors of it at the moment. And I think one thing we should learn as technology companies from the last few years is that we should start thinking at the point of launching our technology about the potential societal implications of what we're putting out there. And if we are arguing that verified capture is a meaningful technology that we want to release into the wild, let's try to think what the negative effects could be. And we started thinking about this in two main ways. One is in terms of privacy. How do we provide this technology without enabling to become a form of surveillance of people? At the end of the day, we need to know the location and time these photos and videos were captured in order to authenticate that piece of data. So how do we do that? And the second one is in terms of access. If we are saying this is a meaningful way to document the truth, we don't want to make it available only to people of a certain socioeconomic status. So how do we do that, and how do we think about that? So I'm afraid I don't have answers for either one of these, but I have some initial thoughts, and some of them are results of our internal discussions within the company, and some of them are discussions with our partners. In terms of privacy, I think we at least covered part of this discussion. As I mentioned, we don't actually store the sensitive material itself, and we don't have any named users. But maybe that's not enough. Another thing that I went out and I looked at, not only at our solution, but at our competitors as well, is that actually none of these solutions do any sort of background monitoring on your device. So if you choose to capture a photo, then your location will be recorded. Even if you opened your camera and decided you may want to capture but didn't end up capturing it, it will not. And certainly your device won't wake up every 15 minutes and try to gauge your location. We don't do that, and none of the verified capture solutions that I've seen on the market do that at present, and I think that's a good sign. And what that means practically is that even if you are a very prolific photographer and capture quite a few verified photos or videos per day, the ability to take that data and turn it into a pattern that would compromise your privacy is, at least in my view, very, very low. So that's a few thoughts on privacy. Let's talk about financial exclusion. I think we are starting to understand in this economy what the financial model looks like. And whether I look at it through our lens as a company that works primarily with media organizations, or I look at our competitors that may be a bit more focused on the insurance domain, it seems that in all cases, the entity that does the payment is not the individual who is capturing the photos or videos, but actually the receiving entity that wants to verify their authenticity, which I think is a good starting point. But then we went back and asked ourselves, are we excluding people implicitly? So for example, if my technology could only run on a high-end mobile device, on the latest iPhone or the latest Android, are we implicitly leaving people behind? So what we did is we went back to our SDK and made sure that it is backward compatible all the way to Android API 21. What does that mean to humans? Well, it means that you can go out, buy a 10-pound phone at Argus, and our SDK would still be able to support that phone. So that's, I think, our initial thoughts on each one of these verticals. In terms of what we see as the next evolution for verified capture, I think right now we are at the early adoption stage. Right now we are working with some human rights organizations that are working in very hostile territories and providing them the capabilities both to automate the capture process, but also automate the analysis process. So with one click, they can generate a 10-page report that completely validates the photographic evidence or the video evidence that they've collected. We are very soon launching in the UK with a global media organization that's headquartered here. I can't share the name just now, but it will come out very, very soon. And the idea there, I think, is pretty cool, because effectively it will allow anyone, anywhere, to capture and submit photographic evidence, both photos and videos, to this publisher. And by the time these land on the editorial desk, all of the checks that I've showed you earlier will already have been done. So effectively, we're looking at zero-time verification from the perspective of the receiving party. In terms of how we expect and hope to see this unfold, so I think one thing is scale. We want to see this more widely deployed, and I'm hoping that we see that through adoption by at least one major social network relatively soon. And the second is maybe a bit more far-looking, and it has to do with standardization, as in how do we talk about the authenticity of photos and videos in a way that's more collaborative. Right now, we have our own standards. Some of our competitors have a certain way to communicate their information. But certainly, you can think of a unified standard that supports not only verified capture, but also creative software, such as Adobe. So I think that's an interesting space to watch, and we're actually seeing some conversations start to happen in industry much, much earlier than we would have anticipated. So that's all I had to present today. I hope it was clear. Happy to take any questions.
Hi, Robert Scott, GDS. Does your system require people to trust you? Because I say that because most kind of signature schemes that work on a sort of published scheme and source that can be verified right down to the mathematical details. I see you mentioned standardization, so you've clearly thought about this to an extent.
Sure. So in terms of what we provide, I guess in terms of trust, we're mainly talking about the entities that are receiving these photos and videos and need to ascertain whether they believe us when we say they are real or not. So in the immediate, in the near future, what we already do is we don't just provide a binary answer. We provide a full chain of the results of our checks and which ones of those fell and which one of those passed. Also, there's also the issue of proving these results to a third party. So we've actually also built into the system the ability not just to run checks, but generate a document that we structured after the structure of a financial audit that exactly goes through the procedures, through the findings, and how we arrived in these results. So currently we try to do that in terms of maintaining that level of privacy with whoever is viewing these results. Some of our competitors are using the blockchain to document their findings. My feeling is that if we're going to do that, it needs to be a public blockchain. It's not on our immediate roadmap because that's not what our customers are telling us that is a priority, but I could certainly see that happening in the very near future.
Following on from the previous question in a similar vein, do you have any idea of the probability of collisions within the system? So that is the probability that a given image that has been manipulated could be identified as a genuine image?
Yes, so we have done. So we do work with a senior academic advisor and a senior cyber advisor as well. We've done this analysis internally, and with this level of external scrutiny, at the simplest way to put it is we don't think it's mathematically feasible to perform that.
Let's thank our speaker again.